Enochs, and this is the Enochs Show, America's most controversial podcast, coming to you live from UNT. This is KNTU Radio with
Brock Bergen,
Jackson Carter Pullmeyer.
This is Enochs with our special guest, Dr. Travis Dickinson from Dallas Baptist University. Man, I haven't seen you in about 10 years.
it's been a bit.
You know, I met Dr. Dickinson 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, when he was a professor, one of the best professors at the school I got my undergrad degree. Finally got my undergrad degree at Southwestern Baptist Seminary, Theological Seminary. It's kind of a little weird place for me. I wasn't really into the Southern Baptist thing, but I got a degree out of it, like legitimate accredited degree. And I just thought he was outstanding when it came to Christian philosophy, Christian apologetics, pretty rigorous professor. It was not that any of my professors were really bad. It was just I felt you stood out as a great professor there, and stayed in touch with him. And the last couple of years, when did you come over to Dallas Baptist?
I'm in my third year there, so 2021.
And you teach Christian philosophy and apologetics classes there now.
Yeah, philosophy, just in general, and the occasional Christian apologetics class.
I haven't really seen you since we drove together through Dallas, stopped by where JFK got assassinated, and then we met Ben Arbour at a regional ETS meeting. This is 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, this guy, Ben Arbour, great husband, great father of like 4 kids, had just got his Ph.D. from some great school in Europe or England or something, gets back. Him and his wife had a date night, and they get back from a date night, and I guess some kids in the neighborhood were drag racing.
Yeah.
And somehow struck his car, instantly killed him, our friend Ben Arbour, and his wife, Meg. Just a heartbreaking situation.
Super sad.
Yeah, pretty sad. So Travis got his Ph.D. from the University of Iowa. Before that, he went to a really rigorous philosophy program at Biola University, studied under J.P. Moreland. He's kind of a noted Christian philosopher, Christian apologist. Doug Geivett. Is Doug Geivett still teaching there?
He's not there anymore.
Okay, retired or?
Yeah, I think it was a retiring.
Yeah. So Biola University. So you've written some books on Christian apologetics, Wandering Towards God, Finding Faith Amid Doubt and Big Questions, Logic in the Way of Jesus, Thinking Critically. So, Travis, how did you become a Christian? I mean, for me, obviously Christianity matters a lot to me, but I'd like to hear from you. What was the big, because you told me one time your brother went to Yale, but pretty much an atheist or doesn't?
No, he's not an atheist, but, he's sort of he was in New York for a number of years and has definitely been a bit more progressive, landed in a more progressive spot than I.
So did you grow up in a Christian home?
Yes, very Christian. So my great-great-grandfather founded a ministry in New Jersey, and it's a ministry for kind of alcoholics, drug addicts, that sort of thing. And I grew up in that setting, which I always say, like, my goodness, like the pressure on a kid in that setting to believe a particular way is pretty strong. And so, I grew up in that setting, and we went to church every Sunday. We went to Sunday school, youth group, did every retreat, camp, did mission trips, you kind of name it, we did it as kids. And then, just kind of grew up in that very, very Christian setting.
So, New Jersey, man, that was cold.
Cold?
That was cold.
There are colder places. It's the Northeast, yeah.
But I went to Princeton Seminary.
Right.
And Man, I hated it. The weather. The great campus, beautiful.
Yeah.
How far from Princeton were you?
I don't know for sure, but we were on the coast, so we're kind of like straight east of Philly,
I've been
the
there.
ocean. So
I've never
Tom's
seen
River
flatter
area.
water, guys, in all my life.
Flatter?
Flatter.
No waves?
No waves.
Yeah.
Because I've lived in California and I've lived in Hawaii. Flat waves. Do you remember a guy at, like we need to pray for is, you remember a guy named Van Komatsu?
I don't know that name, I don't think.
There's 5 Komatsu brothers. And they all ended up going to Southern Seminary. One of them.
That's why we need to pray for him?
No.
Oh.
Because they're from Maui.
Oh.
I don't know why they went. Maui had that massive fire.
Oh, okay.
No, just I've lost track of them, and I think they all went back to Maui.
Okay.
So I don't know where they were at in relation to the fire. So I had a couple questions for you.
All right.
Brock, did you grow up in a Christian background?
Yeah, I'd say so.
What kind of Christian church did you come out of?
I don't really remember much. It was when I was younger, so I don't really remember much of that.
The denomination.
What you do know is that Green Bay Packers won the other day, huh?
Sure do.
And then you're going to talk about that at the end a little bit, but you had a Christian background, right?
Yeah, Church of Christ.
Pretty strict, huh?
I don't know about strict. Maybe just a little.
No musical instruments.
A little boring sometimes. Yeah.
No musical instruments.
I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it actually. I'm not a huge fan of the big mega churches with the big old bands and everything now. Maybe that's just a hang up from my Church of Christ days, but I'm not practicing anything anymore.
So Travis, what evidence is there for the existence of God? Okay, because we live in a very pluralistic society now. A lot of people call it a post-Christian era.
Yeah.
So you really believe there's tangible evidence that the God of Christianity exists?
Yes.
Well, give us some evidence, yeah.
So I think that there is a wide variety of evidence. So where I always start is to say, right, when we begin to think about just reality, there's a lot of things that I think, just in terms of our worldview. And by worldview, I just mean like kind of just literally what that sounds like is how we view the world, how we think of the world. And we have a number of anomalous, sort of features of the world that seem really difficult to explain if there is no God. So, for example, the existence of the universe itself is one of these just, you'd think if we could explain anything, we need to explain that. But it's really hard to explain the existence of the universe, especially with a kind of finite universe where there was a absolute beginning that we refer to as the Big Bang. It's hard to explain what caused or what is responsible for the Big Bang itself. It doesn't seem to be a kind of necessary event that had to happen, and it seems really odd to say that it has no cause. And so what are our available options? Well, I think we sort of run out pretty quickly, or at least I put it this way, that I think that believing in the existence of God or thinking that there is a creator does in fact explain pretty well the existence of the universe. And then when we sort of zoom in on the universe, we see a variety of features. You could sort of zoom out to cosmic view where you look at the initial conditions of the universe, the so-called fine-tuning of the universe, which seem to be certain conditions that are kind of dialed in a particular way without which there wouldn't be life in the universe. There may not even be a universe. It could have just sort of banged and then collapsed back on itself. So you have those sort of fine-tuning constants. You can also kind of go down into the sort of global view of reality and look at the Earth, and there's just a variety of things that have to be exactly how they are. The kind of distance of the Earth from the sun, the fact that it's on an axis. The moon is really important to life on the planet, and it's a really unique situation of how we have the moon as it is, because it's larger than most moons and that sort of thing. As I understand it, I'm definitely not coming in as a science expert here, but as the scientists tell me. And then you can zoom all the way down into sort of a micro view when you look at the DNA, the fact that it contains information, like rich information, libraries upon libraries of information, similar to, at least analogous to digital code. And we just, right, so it's sort of like when you see all this intricacy and you wonder, like, why is it this way rather than some other way? It looks like, and has looked to many people like, it's designed. And so there again, on the theistic view, that pretty well explains, right, that design is that God, there is a designer. God designed it to be this particular way. And again, like, we can just kind of keep going. I mean, I think that's the thing that, for me, there's so many things. So there's the moral argument for God's existence, that the thesis that God exists explains moral facts. The argument from reason or logic that the existence of God would explain the fact that we have the ability to reason and appeal to logical principles and that sort of a thing. And you just keep going, and there's just a variety of reasons, I think, to believe that God exists. Now, all of these are resistible. Like, I think there are challenges to each of these, and I'm certainly not saying that this is like just a total slam dunk, but what I do think has lots of force for me personally is the cumulative force of this great variety, right? If Planning is right, there's 24 or so arguments for God's existence that all have that provide independent reasons to believe that God exists.
As I'm sitting there listening to you, I look over at Jason Carter's shirt. It talks about national parks. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the leading libertarian economist in the country on the show, Walter Block, and he believes in the privatization of national park system. Right, he's a libertarian.
Okay.
But I don't. What the heck? What is that? Did you notice you have a national park shirt on?
I didn't think about it in relation to our conversation with Dr. Block, but I guess it does have some significance.
Yeah, we want to have the guy back on, and we want to debate him on the issue of
I'll have to
water,
dressed.
privatization of water. Like some people believe that water should be completely privatized. Right. I'm not sure. My libertarianism doesn't go that far. Put a quarter in a drinking fountain, like every time you get something like that. But in listening to you, it would seem that, I mean, the only pushback I would say is that couldn't a Muslim or a theist, who was that one really famous guy that was an atheist for all those years, and then towards the end of his life, he made some kind of profession of
Anthony Flew.
Anthony Flew, right? So that maybe that there was God existed, right? So,
but it's like Aristotle's God, or he wasn't committed to a particular, certainly not the Christian God necessarily, but just that there's some being that's responsible for probably some of at least the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that I would agree that the complexity of the world, there's no random. Obviously design has a designer, right?
Yeah.
But I think what I'm getting at is that you could have like a multitude of different religious, theistic belief systems out there that could use that evidence to substantiate it. So in Christianity, I mean, Jesus Christ, and I believe that the New Testament is an accurate document of ancient history, believe it's reliable, hasn't been corrupted throughout history, despite what different Bart Ehrman and different people said. But like Jesus Christ says, I am the Father of one, right? Like he's the only way to the Father, right? So he takes it a little farther than.
Absolutely.
Right. So what I'm saying is
nothing that I've said really gets us to. Certainly not the sort of God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus.
How do you make that leap?
Yeah.
How do you make that intellectual jump from just some basic, not some, I mean, incredible stuff you're talking about here.
Yeah.
But how do you make that jump from theistic belief, the evidence for a theistic belief, which I agree with, to Jesus Christ of Nazareth being the Son of God who died, rose again, and only way to heaven? I mean, seems like a significant move, right?
Yeah.
Intellectual move there, right?
Well, it's a long story. How long do we have?
Man, I mean, we got you in here. We want to know
No.
what, as a Christian apologist, we want to know what.
So let me just sort of indicate which way. But I think that's in very many ways that's the right journey, right? Because I think that if God doesn't exist, then I'm not sure it's worth. Like if somebody's committed to the idea that God does not exist, then I'm not sure it's worth really haggling about the truth of Christianity, because I just don't know that you get there without sort of this prior commitment to believing in God's existence. It's possible, and I'd have the conversation with anybody wherever they're at, and if they were asking questions about Christianity, then I'm happy to try to, address those. But let me. So if one can sort of see, there's reason to believe that God exists. Maybe they come to that belief that God exists. But now the question is, what's the right story? I do think so. With the arguments that I talked about, I'm not sure, certainly not every religious tradition that believes in God of some sort or other can, see those as arguments for their particular version. So I think Mormonism, for example, has God as a physical being in the universe, not transcendent of it. It's not God for them is not the creator, is not the designer, and so on. So those arguments wouldn't actually work for that. So if we've come to see that those are necessary sort of steps to get to the belief that God exists, then in some ways we've sort of ruled out views like, say, Mormonism. I even think Islam, especially when it comes to the moral argument for God's existence, now I'm speaking outside of my area of expertise again, so I just want to put that caveat there. But as I understand it, that Muslims, or at least a certain version of Islamic theology, says that God is not perfectly good. Like he's not the ground of moral goodness. He's divine will. So that whatever he does is good. He sort of determines good in that way. So if you're familiar with the Euthyphro dilemma, Muslims will take, at least again, certain versions of it, perhaps, will take the horn of the dilemma that just says, whatever God commands is good. And so I'm not sure you can go from objective moral facts, because in some ways there are no objective moral facts. They're just arbitrary. It's whatever God does. It's whatever God commands on Islam. So we've maybe narrowed in a little more than, just any version of God will do. But we've certainly not gotten to the God of Christianity or the God of the Bible or the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus. So how do we get there? Okay, I think one big thing that I'm thinking about a lot that I think is worth thinking about, that if a perfectly good, all-powerful, transcendent God exists, and he's decided to bring the universe into existence, then the fact that we sin, the fact that we have fallen, the fact that we are all those things didn't catch him by surprise. And so it's sort of a problem of evil as a reason to think that maybe the Christian story has it right. Because what you have to reconcile, I think, is a perfect being who's all-powerful and all-knowing, knowing what we will in fact do, and yet we, are morally imperfect. And so we need some story. The right story will be one that makes sense of that fallenness. And I, for one, have never taken it to be very compelling to say that, hey, what you need to do in order to be kind of, in this place of salvation or reconciled with God is to do a bunch of stuff, to do works, to do good things, and that's going to be the way you earn your way to God. The problem with that, of course, is that we're already broken. So, to just tell me to just do a list of things to do is not really addressing the problem that I've got, if that makes sense, right? I give the sort of analogy of going to the doctor. Let's say we've broken our leg, and we go to the doctor, and the doctor tells us that here's what you need to do. Go ahead and walk that off. Right? The problem is, I've got a broken leg. How in the world is walking it off supposed to address the issue? It's likely to make it worse. And so when other religious traditions, which here's the reality, all other religious traditions just give us a list of things to do, give us works to do. It's only the Christian gospel that is a gospel of grace that says, right? And so the same way with the trying to walk off a broken leg, to tell us to do certain actions doesn't actually address the brokenness in our lives, and it's likely to make it worse. So we need some solution to the problem we actually have, and I think the Christian gospel provides that, because it's not about what we do. It's about what someone else has done on our behalf, namely Christ on the cross. And I just think that's a beautiful, compelling story, right? And again, this is just one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately as a way to get to the Christian claim. You can, of course, give historical evidence for the claims of Scripture and so on and so forth.
You know, something that I haven't told you about, we haven't really talked much in the last 10 years or so.
Okay.
You know, and traipsing across the country, getting different degrees and stuff. But I've experienced a really newfound appreciation for John Warwick Montgomery,
Okay.
which I didn't have when I was when I was there at Southwestern. But so John Warwick Montgomery is still alive. He's like in his 90s, right?
Yeah.
So he was this man, guys. I think he had 12 earned degrees, 2 earned Ph.D s. Guy did like a master's degree in library science just because he wanted to research for his own books, right? Like this mass, but he wrote a phenomenal book called History and Christianity. And basically Josh McDowell's books, The Evidence Demands a Verdict, and Warren Carpenter, all that are basically popularized versions. But basically what he argues is that if you treat the Bible, in this case the New Testament, as any document of ancient history, you apply the same standards a historian would use to confirm or disconfirm the reliability of a document, you'll find that the New Testament is more than reliable in comparison to other literature of ancient history. And from that, it basically substantiates the historicity of the New Testament's picture of Jesus Christ. And from that, we have Jesus Christ not being just a mere teacher, but being a person that claimed to be God, who died on the cross and rose again from the dead.
Right.
The historicity of the resurrection is involved in all that. And that is a very strong argument for me.
Yeah.
And it's helped me through a lot of things. I mean, Jesus Christ being actually living in history, dying in history, rising again from dead in history seems to be a very strong argument. I'm very appreciative of that whole, argument. I've kind of went away from the kind of the presuppositional argument because in many ways it's kind of like a circular argument. Not that we want to get into all that for this, but
Sure.
But I think let me ask you this question. So there's a lot of religions in this world. You have just a multiplicity of them. Oh, and by the way, we actually had one of the leading Mormon scholars in the United States on this show, Robert Bowman. Matthew, but Robert Bowman is a Christian philosopher. Yeah. Matthew Bowman, Dr. Matthew Bowman is the professor, the chaired professor of Mormon Studies at Claremont Graduate University. He came on here. I would love somewhere down the line if you guys can come on and have a calm dialogue about some of these issues, Mormonism and Christianity. And I know that he'd have something to say back to you on some of the things you said, sure. Right? So, but the thing I wanted to ask though is that so you have Baha'i faith, you have Muslims, you have Hare Krishna and Buddhists and Hindu, all this, right? Isn't it arrogant to say that Christianity alone is the only way to God and the only way to redemption is through Jesus Christ? Isn't that kind of arrogant?
I don't think it's arrogant to make a claim. I think arrogance is more about how you make the claim than the actual claim itself. Because
they're making claims too, right?
Right, and to say that Jesus, that Christianity is not the only way or Jesus is not the only way is a kind of exclusive claim as well. I think we can't get away from that, and I don't think we should get away from that. We're all making claims, even if you claim to not be making a claim. That's a claim. And so what we just need to do is, we do need to be intellectually humble, I think. And I do try to be. I mean, this latest book that I've got out on doubt is really, in a way, saying that doubt is a great value. Like, we should be questioning things. I think this makes some people nervous, right? Christians, that is, because I'm truly saying, like, no, we should be asking these questions. And guess what's going to likely happen when we ask these questions is we're going to struggle with them. Let's call that doubting. But that's okay, because we can lean into those and continue to pursue the questions and find truth and knowledge as a result. And that's my story. So I grew up in that very, very Christian setting.
Conservative evangelical?
Very.
What kind of, is it non-denominational evangelicalism?
Pretty non-denominational, yeah.
Man, I never forget, I'm at Princeton Theological Seminary, and I go to this, I don't even know what this was, but it had a Awana, right? That, like, this kind of Christian Bible study thing. Like, and now say it had a Awana, so obviously only evangelicals you have a Awana group,
sure,
right?
Right.
So I don't know that it's an independent fundamentalist Baptist church, right? So I go in this church, and pastor's got like 9 kids. Not that kids are a blessing from the Lord, right? How many kids do you have? Like 5? Four, right?
Just 4.
All right, but so he has 9 kids, and he goes, "How are you? Where'd you come from?" I go, "Oh, I'm actually going to Princeton Seminary." It was like his head almost spun around like The Exorcist. He was so shocked that a student from Princeton Seminary would come to this Baptist church.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Are you Christian?" Like he just couldn't believe that a student from Princeton Seminary would come to this Baptist church, right? But it just seemed that it was like a really strict fundamentalist. They made me like get up there, give my testimony how I became a Christian. It was definitely a little of a challenge,
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
So you're saying, if I understand the gist of Christianity, and I understand your background and everything a little bit, that Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven.
Yes. That's my own belief, yes. I think that is true.
So I hate to, I'm just going to challenge you just on this. No, I agree with this. I'm playing devil's advocate.
I got you.
Okay. But I got my friend here, Jackson Carter. He has, what did you have in a couple of weeks ago? You had like a warlock. You had a warlock.
Practitioner of folk magic, I believe it's called.
Yeah, so we obviously have different views going on out there, right?
That's what you were into?
That's what I was talking. That's what I was talking to. I did an interview with somebody.
Oh, nice.
So the question I have is, just in the most basic way possible, how do you? So make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying there is evidence that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and that Christianity is true, and based upon that, we should believe in the exclusive claims of Christianity. Is that
I think I'd be on board with all that. Right? Again, because it's a long story, and I wouldn't expect anybody just to sort of, in 5 minutes accept that full package, because I think it's a really big claim. So that's why I say, like, that's a long conversation typically. But I think that there's evidence for that. And so, I don't know if this is behind your question at all, but right, if it's true, then it's exclusively true. There's no sense in which it's true and then so is atheism and so is Islam and so is these other things. I think given the claims of Christianity, given the claims of Christ himself, I just don't think we're left with the option to say, and it's all true. Like it can all be true all at the same time, because they're mutually exclusive claims being made. I even probably would say that about the Jewish person. They are making claims that are not consonant with the claims of Christ, right? Because they're not Christians, and that just makes sense. And so, if there's reason to believe that Christianity is true, if it's true, then it's exclusively true.
So one thing in doing this podcast for the last couple of years, something that I guess I've developed is just a concern what other like non-Christians are thinking. You know, one thing I've tried to do, and this show is not like a gotcha show. Some people have even accused me of not even being a Christian on this show because I talk about issues that have nothing to do with specifically.
Try writing a book on doubt and see how people react.
So, I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, I think every week I claim my Christian faith, but I don't make everybody on my show be a Christian, and it doesn't drive everything, every discussion. Maybe it does in a certain way that I just want to be fair and loving to people. But I'm out there thinking, so I think what I'm hearing you say, so if a Muslim says that Christianity is not true, that Jesus Christ was just a prophet, that's a unique truth claim in itself.
Yeah, exclusive truth claim.
Exclusive truth claim. And Christianity comes along with its own dueling Christian interpretation or truth claim. Mm-hmm. So the issue is that you have just different truth claims being made, and what we have to do is look at the evidence for those different claims being. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And that's where I say, like, a kind of intellectual humility is called for, because my problem in my story is that I got through all of that stuff I talked about, my background, all the way through Bible college to seminary, and never had truly asked, is this thing really true? And do I have reasons to believe it? I believed it. Like, that's why I always say, like, I think there's a lot of really sincere Christians that are out there who genuinely believe in Christianity. They just have themselves good reason to believe it's true. They just believed it because they've grown up with it, or they're here in Texas, right, where there's a lot of Christians. And so it's a kind of group think. And that was definitely my story. And it wasn't until I really dug into apologetics and those sorts of things that it caused me really to struggle, actually. Because all of a sudden I'm looking at these hard challenges and objections, and I realize I don't actually have good reasons to believe Christianity is true. And I was in this place of like significant doubt. And rather than just walking away at that point, this is what I do in the book, is say we've got to lean into doubt and investigate. Like the way I put it is a Dallas Willard phrase, to doubt our doubts. And because I think what we do when we do that, no matter where we end up, so even if we reject the whole thing, we've presumably found ourselves in a more reasonable place. Presumably we've found truth. And for me, though, ironically, I've found a greater faith. So doubts, for me, led to more faith.
You know, I can say for myself, I've went through, since I've seen you last, one of the massive, cataclysmic, life-altering, painful experiences, like just shredded my life. Just shredded me to the point where I couldn't even like move physically. I was so down. And all I knew is I just wanted to know God. So I said, this is no slam on Southern Baptist or rock and roll Christianity, guys in skinny jeans up there. I just said, where can I go in Texas where I can encounter God? For me, obviously, the historic Reformed faith is really precious to me. And I went back to this Anglican church in downtown Fort Worth, St. Andrews. It's a very famous evangelical Anglican church downtown. And I just said, I can't even barely move right now. I'm so down right now. And so, can't believe, the pain I'm enduring right now. And I just would go to the same spot on the side, and I just cried out to the living God. I said, God, I know you. I know this pain. This is real. I don't know all the circumstances why I'm going through this, but I didn't allow that painful situation to push me. It actually brought me into a closer I mean, I didn't want to go through that. I wish I didn't go through what I went through.
Right, of course.
You know, but one of the biggest reasons why I had you come on the show is I think I saw a clip or something from you speaking at DBU in Chapel.
Okay.
And having these young guys on the show, it's a blessing having you guys on. And Brock, by the way, when we talk about University of Michigan and this whole sign stealing scandal, I want to have you come on. But real quick before we get back to this, you got anything to say about that real quick? Like, do you think Jim Harbaugh should survive or what? Real quick, Brock.
Honestly, no, because like with the way that like he knew about it, now they're trying to deflect it onto other like Ohio State and Indiana. Speaking to this, okay, yeah, so they're trying to deflect it now onto Ohio State and Indiana and other colleges that they're not trying to claim that they were the ones passing it on to, but it's pretty clear Michigan started all of it, so Harbaugh needs to go. Let's
Well, I'm not sure if you knew this, but something I wrote got picked up by Yahoo News, and but just arguing the same thing. Brock, hopefully in a few days we'll have you on. Usually Brock and I talk about 20 minutes of sports on the show, right? But sports are dear to my heart. But one reason why I do this podcast and one reason why I had you on here is because we're living in this Generation Z.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these young college kids are in despair.
Yeah.
Like no hope. Like it's a big issue, anguish of like they look at the future and Jackson Carter and I last week, my sister had some little pushback on you, by the way. She said some things about like that, but I said, no, he's just a young guy, 20 years old, and he's talking about, I see the gifts in you, man. My sister saying, oh, he's not grateful for what he's got. I'm going like, look, what they're encountering, like a completely broken political system. Like the government is not providing him any hope for anything. And I see you trying to give young people like Brock and Jackson Carter hope. In a dark time. I don't think there's ever been a darker time in American history than now. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like there's such apathy and such skepticism about the institute, about the church. Isn't there like a massive departure from Christianity right now? And
yeah, there is, and I think a lot of it does have to do with the, kind of ugliness that we see. Just sort of, not that it's forced on us, but we just see it. It's sort of plain to see with all the scandals and pastors who are clearly in it for something like money or power.
Show me the money, as Jerry Maguire said.
Yeah. And so, you've got something in the neighborhood of 64% of Christian kids walking away from the church. Now, they're not necessarily renouncing their faith. They might, but they're renouncing the church. And many of them do renounce their faith too. But 64% is this big umbrella term of college kids mostly. It's around the college years at least, where they'll walk away from the faith, and that's just extraordinary. So, but the other thing is that that's a fairly conservative number, as I understand it. That there's some studies that put it up as high as 88%. I think there's an SBC study that puts it as high as that. That there will be a time in which 88% of our kids are walking away from the faith. Walking away from the church. So it's a big deal, yeah. And I think that, but there's a kind of grim reality that I think, face the kids that walk away, because it's sort of like, well, what's the whole point of life then? If it's not that, what is it? And I don't know that they're getting good answers always for why be moral, why care about things, why not just be after my own stuff and so on, and depression and mental health and suicide and everything else has absolutely come along.
UNT is getting ready to play Northern Iowa, and Brock, you're gonna have to get going in here in a second, I think, right?
Right.
So hold on, just give me a sec. But I wanted to say before we wrap, believe it or not, 45 minutes have passed.
That's all right.
And it's been a high honor to have you on the show, and I mean that in all sincerity. It's just, I have nothing but love and support for what you're doing, you and your family. One thing I've always appreciated about you is that you're a family man of kids and wife, and you're trying to navigate this Christian ministry and teaching at DBU now. with a Christian family that loves you, and I appreciate that a lot. In the future, we'll try to have you chime in through Zoom because I don't want you to drive up here. But I'd love to have you on again. Maybe do something with Matthew Bowman about the Mormon thing. Just so, a lot of times when Mormons and evangelicals get together, it's this big shouty match.
Yeah,
That's not our show. We just we express different views. But I'm gonna give Jackson Carter the last question before we let Brock get out of here, and you get back down to. You got to go down to Fort Worth, huh?
Yep.
And down that perilous 35 freeway. Jackson, you got anything you want to say real quickly? Because I know you come from like a kind of a quote unquote post-Christian kind of context.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Just especially related to what you were talking about right at the end there.
The bleakness and darkness of our culture right now.
I think. I don't know. How do you try and approach something that, it's caused by all of these tangible factors, but, at the end of the day, this is just like a feeling that a significant amount of people my age have. That's just like, it's not worth investing in anything in this world. And so I think that one of the things that a lot of modern organized religions have failed to capture is a sense of feeling. I think for a lot of people it's a sense of obligation. I'm supposed to go to church, I'm supposed to pray, I'm supposed to donate and do this and whatever else. But if it's just an obligation, you're only going to feel obligated. You're not going to feel any better about yourself or your beliefs. So I wonder how an organized religion could change their own practices in order to fix that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm not interested in the organized part of religion in a way, or at least I'm less interested in that. I'm part of it. Obviously I'm part of the local church and things like that. But what I'm most interested in is the gospel. I'm most interested in it as, is this true? But I think that part of the disparity, the despair, the fact that, there's a kind of lack of hope and meaning and so on, what we haven't done a good job at is not just argue for the truth. I mean, it has to be true, because I think that's part of it. Is for some people, they say well, yeah, it's great, go to heaven, be with God, but I just don't think that's true anymore. And so we do have to make that argument, of course. But I think, again, as we've kind of talked, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about the case for the truth of Christianity. But I actually think that that's just one part. The other parts is the goodness of Christianity and the beauty of Christianity.
Not the scam-filled fraud stuff that you see, but you're talking about Jesus of Nazareth, the true Jesus that healed and raised people from the dead.
Personal practice in communities and such.
Because that stuff's ugly and that stuff is evil, right? And so if that's what we're seeing, then I'm walking away. If that's the church, I'm walking away too, to be honest with you. But I've come to be convinced that the gospel is not only true, but it's good and it's beautiful. Right? Because we need more than just truth. Because if you think about something like, we all know, and I'll probably talk to you and I more just being older, right? We all know we need to exercise regularly, eat healthy, and so on.
All the things I don't do,
guys. We know
that's
true, but it's not lovely to us. It's not beautiful to us. And so we're not motivated to go after it in a way. There's lots of things we believe are true, but we just don't care that much about it. And so I think that's where a lot of people are at. They're not really knee deep in the science of it all or the philosophy or the history of it all. They just see it as ugly. They don't see it as lovely in any way. Whereas I think when we really sort of get down to it, the gospel is just the most beautiful. It's the most good. It's true. It's a true story. It's a true claim. And I think that's the real difference maker for me. That's really where I arrived, that I think just captured my life, where I couldn't, with intellectual honesty, walk away at this point in time.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. Like you said, you're highly honored here to come on this show anytime. We're going to get Brock over to his basketball game. Brock, we'll see what happens. We'll get a hold of you soon about this University of Michigan thing.
For sure.
I know you got some stuff going on. Jackson Carter, we'll talk about that soon. Thank you for coming on the show. And this has been Lee Enochs.
Jackson Carter Polmeyer.
Brock Bergen.
Travis Dickinson.
Talking about the issues that matter most. And today, we talked about Christianity and why we think it's relevant in a dark world. Have a great night. Thanks, guys.